Hi, Jim.
Joe,
What's going on?
good to see you.
Good to see you.
Doing well.
Good. Good. Where are you located?
Boston. How about you?
Boston. I'm in Kansas City.
Okay, that's right. I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, it's great to
I
meet you, man.
listened to the episode you did a few weeks ago with the retired spy. That was pretty fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. That was fun. Yeah, it's just the
Not every
world of
day you get to talk to a retired spy.
that's right. And that's the thing. It's like most people will never not only be a spy, but even to talk to them and to pick their
No,
brains.
seriously.
Because everything's built up in this Hollywood thing and it's just different. Everything's different,
Yeah,
you know? So,
yeah.
but
I,
yeah,
I like how he equated it to the world's oldest professions. That was pretty funny.
yeah, it is. There was a lot of things in there that he dropped that was just kind of revelatory. Just it was
Yeah,
really cool for sure.
yeah.
Um, well, man, I'm really looking forward to peeling back the layers of your life and where you're at now and how we got here. And to begin that process, how did you survive the pandemic? Last 3.5 years or so, it's been quite a heavy thing. How did you get through it and how did it change you?
The pandemic was a time where I was just getting ready to launch this new kind of innovation model that I had pioneered. And so literally at the end of 2019, I just finished writing a white paper on that topic. And so 2020 was a year where I was going to launch this into companies. And then the pandemic hit and everybody was afraid, afraid of their jobs. Companies were cutting costs and it was a time of fear. And so it was not the right time to go into companies and try to get their employees to be more innovative, right?
Yeah.
And so I decided that instead of fighting against the tide, I wanted to work on a civic project that I had been interested in and had kind of been toying with for a number of years. And that's how do almost do the same thing in our democracy that I'm trying to do in companies, which is, create space for everybody to be part of the solution instead of only the people at the top getting to make all the big bad decisions, right? So so it really turned into I formed a nonprofit, and the idea was to create a new democracy based on individuals making the decisions for their own communities instead of people at the top making decisions that apply at state levels or federal levels. And I think what I love about decentralized systems in general is that they're very vibrant, they're very nimble, they're very innovative, and you end up just doing what you think is right and not worrying about what people in other parts of the country are doing. It's funny how when you break things down to your own community, we already sort ourselves into like-minded people pretty much, but based on where we live. And a lot of the issues that get us all tied up into knots kind of melt away when you make it a local decision. So, gun rights look very different if you live on the plains of Wyoming than if you live on the streets of New York City, right? So these types of things we're fighting at a national level, and the whole context is missing. And so anyway, that the not the Omicron, the Delta virus hit right when I was, kind of doing some organizing for it. And so I kind of put that on the shelf, but that is something that if we need it, I would like an alternative to uh, some of the more scary things that we may be doing in our political system. So that was how I spent my pandemic. And then I also, as a lead up to that, I also did a project on climate change and how kind of comparing what would happen in a decentralized democracy, how they would tackle climate change versus how we're trying to tackle it with our current democracy. So
Yeah.
some good projects, but I'm glad to be going back to the innovation. How do you get employees to be the innovators instead of leaving it to the couple people at the top of the pyramid?
Well, and the thing that I think even COVID showed us is that there's no gray area. There's no middle area. There's either people that say that climate change is not real or change is real and there's all this science backing it up and we have to do something. Same thing with masks and vaccinations. We've gotten to such a polarized place politically and as people that we can't find that middle ground, like you said. It's it, so it, it's I don't know. It's weird. It's not even like there's people at the top that are doing it. I get it. And we need more people to be involved with it. But it's so polarized. There's no way where it's like, well, maybe it exists, but this doesn't factor into it. It's just one way or another. And I think that's what's kind of driving a wedge with everything, with everybody.
Well, but the polarization is simply a dysfunction of the system that we live in, and so people react to the system that they're put into. We're
Yeah.
all human beings, and I think, what I think is fascinating about human beings is if you put human beings from any culture, background, ethnicity into a specific situation, you're going to get some pretty predictable behavior out of that, right? And so our political system, we have two buckets, two baskets. You can either choose basket A or you can choose basket B. And if you choose, so you have to kind of pick one of those, and the stakes feel so high that you don't want to do anything that might empower the other the other basket, right? The people in the other basket. And so it actually encourages extreme beliefs. I don't think a lot of people that say they don't believe in climate change actually really genuinely believe it. But if you say that, you're then going to be kind of supporting in some ways a party that you may oppose, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with gun laws. I think most people understand that, they make sense in some places and they don't make sense in others. But because you can't say that, you've got to just speak the religion, because if you don't speak the religion of whatever basket you've chosen, then you're empowering the other side. And so I think that's why I think people are people. Like, we know how to disagree with people. We have uncles we disagree with. We have cousins. We have neighbors. We don't, have this same kind of feeling like you're my enemy because I disagree with you. It's like, we agree to disagree in our normal life.
Yeah.
But when it comes to our political system, we react exactly the way that people would react
Yeah.
in very predictable ways. And it encourages extreme behavior. And I'd like to see that stop.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, third graders. It's career day. One of the kids is curious and says, what do you do for a living? How do you answer that child?
I would say I help businesses create growth. And so imagine if you're creating a garden and you find a beautiful plant and you plant that in your garden and it grows and you take care of it every day. At some point, though, that plant is going to die, right? And if you just let that plant die and that's your only plant in your whole garden, then your entire garden is no longer living, right? And so you can go out and buy another plant, but that may not feel as satisfying as the plant that you remember, where you grew it up from a little baby plant and it blossomed into something beautiful. And so what I try to do is, instead of going out and buying another plant when your one plant dies, you plant seeds. And not every seed is going to take root, right? A lot of times it's hit or miss. You've got to plant a lot of seeds actually to get a vibrant garden. But I try to turn businesses into a place of vibrant growth where we don't have to go through layoffs and career, kind of disruptions because of the company stops growing. I want it to be a vibrant garden where things are always happening. There's always opportunity, excitement, energy going on in that garden, instead of just watching your garden slowly die away.
So how did we get to this point? Tell me where you were born and raised and what were these seeds, so to speak, metaphorically, like with the flower. How did it grow into where you're at today and the way you're pursuing your professional life?
Well, I was born in California, and I always liked kind of the California attitude. I mean, if you can see the photo behind, or the painting behind me, it's a wave. I mean, I always kind of like this idea of surfing the waves of, disruption, surfing the waves of change, and it's a nice metaphor. So it's kind of fitting that I was born in California. The A few things happened that were really formative in my life. First, I went to the Marine Corps and I realized that this is not what I want to do with my life. Like, and so that's actually what really encouraged me to go out and, create a life that wasn't something where you have no power and you just, yes, sir, no, sir, right away, sir, this kind of thing, right? Agree with people that you may not agree with. I mean, be able to use your big brain in the way that you can, in the way you think you should. So then I went to Silicon Valley, did 3 Silicon Valley startups, and now that is perfect environment for me. And I think it's just such a blast to be able to create something, to be able to use your big brain. A startup is not a top-down driven organization where the people at the top say, look, we're the brilliant people and you guys are the implementers. And, my big challenge as the person at the top is just to get all these idiots below me to do what to execute my brilliant plans. They are collaborative space for people to use to take their own big ideas and kind of figure things out, because a startup is a search for a repeatable and scalable business model. So it's nothing but a big bucket of challenging and interesting problems. And that's why it's so fun to work at a startup, because you've got a lot of freedom. You have your role and responsibilities, but you have a lot of freedom to reach in that bucket and pull out any interesting problem that you want to work on and go
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And so those were the two things that kind of, I think, set me on a particular direction. After I did three Silicon Valley startups, got an MBA, went to work for big companies. And the culture shock of going from a 10-person startup to a 1,000-person company is far worse than the culture shock I experienced when I moved from America to Japan for 3.5 years. Like, that was nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I've always rejected the idea that it has to be that way. So I've spent my career since then trying to prove that you can go into big companies, and there are innovators just they're everywhere. Like, they are just waiting for some space to do what they think is right. And that's how I'm where I am.
So was Japan wonderful?
It was wonderful. Yeah, this is, I grew up in the Cold War during the Cold War, and I remember sometimes, like, I was just, I mean, you grew up with this kind of this almost this impending fear. Not quite the age where we were building underground bomb shelters for people. That was even worse, right? There's
Yeah.
some pretty clever movies about that age. I grew up, but there was just this big menace
Yeah.
that you were terrified of, and the
Yep.
government worked really hard to make sure we were terrified. And then I went to Japan, which that was in an age where people didn't, Japan and the understanding of Japanese was not what it is today. And it was about as foreign and different from America, which is what appealed to me. It's like, I know America, and I want something different. I want experience. I wanted to see the world. And so, and that's where I really learned that, oh my goodness, I mean, people are people wherever you go.
Yep.
We want to have families, we want to find love, we want to have some reasonable type of career that lets us do what we think is important in life. It's governments that really cause problems, and that's where the tension lies. People are people, and the Japanese people are just it's such a wonderful culture,
Yeah.
and I fell in love with it, and it changed my view on, just how much propaganda I had actually grown up with
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
living in America. And I think I remember seeing a bumper sticker one time that said, "A closed mind is a wonderful thing to lose," and that I feel Japan helped me do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So in your life, who's been inspirational or a hero for you?
Living people, or
Anybody. Yeah. Anybody that's inspired you or been a hero.
well, I think, the one of the founders of at Digital Think, one of the startups that I did, Umberto Moletti, he was just such a great manager, a great person, and I think one of the things he told me one time, which always carried with me, was he said that you can be a superstar at your job, and you can be, even if you're, 5 times, 10 times better than everybody else, the overall impact on the organization is going to be relatively small if it's only you doing that. But if you can make even a small percentage change in people across the company and how they operate, how they work, the impact can be enormous. And so I think that was very, kind of inspirational for me. And then from history, it has to be Aristotle is one of my absolute heroes in life. I just think that he was a person that was just curious about everything. And, a lot of times people ask me, what if I want to be an entrepreneur, what do I need to be? And it's like, be curious. That's all you need in life. Be curious,
Yeah.
and everything else will take care of itself. That is what that is what has driven my successes, and the proudest moments in my life. And so, and I love that Aristotle actually, he was taught very different things. I mean, Plato was his teacher, and so he was taught all the all the rules, all the, like he grew up in a paradigm. And at some point he said, wait, like that doesn't make sense to me. And he went in a completely different direction. And that's not easy to do. It's actually not really easy to break out of the bounds of how you've grown up or what you believe as a business, right? Your business model is a paradigm. How the industry operates is a paradigm. How do you look outside of that? Well, Aristotle did that. Innovators, the people that change the world, they are able to look outside of the paradigm and say, wait, this isn't the whole world. Our democracy. So many people think that, my goodness, this is the only, we either do democracy or we do communism, or, it's like, no, no. Look at nature. There's, an unlimited number of ways to organize societies.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not two or three, right?
Right.
So I I think that idea of being able to look outside, be curious, and make up your own mind about what you believe, and then work at it is inspiring and important.
So who's alive today that's in the ilk of like an Aristotle that you admire, that you would love to talk to, spend some time with if you could?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I'm not a big fan of the heroic leader people, so I'm not interested in talking to presidents or prime ministers or, you know, anybody that is just some kind of golden child. It's funny how to see the fall of Elon Musk, where everybody thought he was just the most brilliant person in the world, and now a lot of people are kind of reevaluating that that belief.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in simply looking and saying these great leaders, these powerful people may not quite be the people that we think they are. And maybe they're not going to be the solution that we hope for. So I would be more interested. I'm always more interested in talking to the people, the unlikely heroes that succeeded against the odds. Another historical figure that I'd love to talk to is Dick Drew at 3M. Like he was kind of the original corporate rebel in terms of my research, the person that just had an idea, started working on it, and as the president of the company comes along and it's like, what in the world are you stop screwing around and get back to work?
Yeah.
And Dick Drew's like, no problem. And he kept doing it, and he invented masking tape, which was, a billion-dollar breakthrough for 3M. and and it actually is what set 3M. Before Dick Drew, 3M was a sandpaper company, a very struggling, barely surviving sandpaper company. After Dick Drew, 3M was an innovative company, and he actually became kind of the catalyst that created the innovative culture at 3M. And so I don't know who those people are today. But like I said, I'm interested in the unlikely heroes. The lady who did a lot of the pioneering research on the mRNA vaccine. Uh, she was a corporate rebel, and she got fired because her managers hated the idea so much that they fired her. It's like, no, you you seem like a smart person, but you're working on this idea that is just idiotic. This makes no sense. So we're going to fire you. And luckily, she kept at it, and because when the pandemic came along, we had it wasn't her alone, of course, but she provided some of the the key breakthroughs that enable us to get a vaccine up and running in record time. So I'm interested in the unlikely heroes. Those are the people I like to talk to, the people that struggle and sacrifice, success against the odds.
So what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
The best advice I would say is just be true to yourself, and kind of, be guided by your own North Star, and not what don't do what everybody else kind of believes in, or what everybody else is doing, or what anybody else is saying. And so that doesn't mean be difficult. I don't think you have to be a jerk
Yeah.
to go your own way. Uh, and the world is not necessarily kind to people that have different ideas. In big companies, and again, this is something that I've spent my career trying to change, but in big companies, if you have an idea that the executive team doesn't like, you're often viewed as you're not a team player. Why, like, why are you being difficult? I'm not being difficult to be difficult. I actually see a problem that I think could be a big issue. And if nobody works on this and nobody investigates this, we may find out we're about to fall off a cliff. And so it's not that change is hard. I don't believe that change is hard, but it's not easy to bring new ideas to the world. And but you've got to be guided by what you believe and not let people beat you up and say, okay, I'm just gonna go back and just keep drinking the Kool-Aid. That's not the way we make progress in our world.
Yeah, for sure. So what is the motivator for you every day? What is it that gets you out of bed? What is it that motivates you to do this work? You're doing some pretty important work, some visionary work. What is it that makes you do that?
Well, it's the idea that you want to make a difference in the world. I think that's what being human is about. And that's absolutely what drives me is that we live in a world of disruption, but I don't think our world of disruption has to be so disruptive to people's lives and to people's livelihoods, right? Uh, these perennial rounds of layoffs and other kind of problems that this creates. We don't, climate change, all of these problems. Normally, when you're facing big problems, you want to roll up your sleeve. Like the intuition is to roll up your sleeve and do something. In our world, we're kind of set up where we get to roll up our sleeves and maybe vote every 2 to 4 years, or we get to roll up our sleeves and hope that the CEO is enlightened and does the right thing, even though it looks like he isn't doing the right thing. And I just so I think that if we create space, one of my favorite beliefs is that my one big idea is that everybody has big ideas.
Yeah.
And I think if we create space for regular people to do little things, like, some of these are going to become breakthroughs. A lot of them are just little steps or little experiments. We're going to end up with different types of innovation. We're going to end up with different type of solutions. We're going to end up with better solutions. A lot of the innovation that happens at the top are innovations that figure out, how do we require less labor? Like, how do we how do we get the same amount of work done with fewer people? How do we, take our top paying people and kind of dumb down the jobs in a way that we can get entry level people and be able to do that for cheaper. These are not, I think, the basis of a really strong and powerful society. It's not the basis for inspiring life, inspiring work life. So so that's what motivates me is I think if we, I've experienced being able to go in and actually make a change that makes a big difference to a company and to an organization, and it feels good. And a lot of people spend their working lives just making money, so hopefully they can find some kind of inspiration outside of their working lives, and that's, it's good to find inspiration everywhere, but I think work offers an enormous potential for rewarding, pursuits, tackling challenges that matter to you. And I would like to see more of that.
So in all of the things that you've done as a professional, you've traversed geography and done all kinds of things. What are you the proudest of? What is it that you hold the highest up?
Well, I think the proudest was, I mean, there's some pretty good ones, but when I worked at GeForce, this was a corporate rebel project where one of the top executives in the company was in charge of designing this product suite. And Cisco was kind of going to be the pilot customer for this new product suite. And this guy was a PhD. He was very smart, but I looked at the designs and it just felt more and more that we're designing something that is designed for people that in love with the technology, not for the salespeople who are supposed to be our target customers. And so I talked to my manager. I even talked to the executive, and I was in charge of front end development for this product suite. So I was a software engineer, the software architect. I was not supposed to be. I wasn't a designer, right? And but I just felt in my gut like something is wrong, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what the solution might be. I didn't necessarily have the language to explain it. Nobody seemed to care. Nobody saw it. Nobody agreed. But by simply speaking up, you kind of put a target on your back. Uh, and so, you know, when all of those avenues were dead ends, I said, I can't like just watch what I thought was a slow motion train wreck
Yeah.
keep going on, right? Like because you you work so hard to kind of get this product ready, and then if the design is flawed, like what do you do then? Like you may be out of runway. Like it could destroy the company, and lose an opportunity for the people in the company itself, for Cisco, for everybody. And so I started working, just trying to. I worked on an unofficial skunkworks project alongside of my other duties. I still did all of my all of my engineering responsibilities, software architect, front-end development work. But then I also started like just digging into this problem, like what is the problem? And so I basically pioneered this kind of customer-centered design. I mean, now we take it for granted. At the time, it wasn't the norm. And and I spent the first 4 months I worked on that project. I spent every week I went in there thinking this is probably the week I'm going to get fired, but I don't care because I'd rather be fired for doing what I think is right than just quietly nod in my head yes when I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is terrible.
Yeah.
And 4 months later, the VP of marketing came up and said, "Wow, I heard you're working on this alternative design for our product suite." And I was like, "Uh-oh." Yeah. And she's like, "I also have a lot of concerns about the direction this product is headed. Why don't you come over? We'll build out a little UX design team, and we'll give the company a plan B just in case this doesn't work out the way that people hope it does." And so that was, and it turned out that what I predicted exactly happened. Once we started beta testing with Cisco, they hated it. But because we had a plan B, there was no crisis. Like we were able to just kind of slide that new design right in and keep going. Even the executive didn't get in trouble. I mean, because there was a plan B. And so I think that that's an example of staying true to yourself, not by, I didn't spend every day just, you don't go around and saying, like, you're an idiot and I'm brilliant and I'm going to, like, you don't, because you don't actually even know what you're doing. You don't know if it's going to work. You don't know if you're right. I could have been wrong about this whole thing, right? But
Yeah.
uh, that's the diversity that gives you options that you wouldn't have if only a couple of people at the top get to make all the big bad decisions. So that was, I've been a corporate rebel my whole career, but that was one of the roughest. I mean,
Yeah.
because it's not easy to just feel like you're being, yeah, I mean, that you might be fired, that
Sure.
you're being, you're suspected of not being a team player, all the other nonsense that people try to label you as.
Yeah.
And you just have to keep kind of persevering and say, if I get this far enough along, and if this proves out, if this turns out the way that I think it's going to be, then people will understand. It's not easy to do that, but it's important.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, Jim, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I just think I'm a regular person who tries to do what he thinks is right in the world. And I think that there's a lot of times when doing what is right is easy, and we all do that. But I try to do the right thing no matter, even when it's the hardest thing in the world to do, right? I think this is true when you raise kids. There's a lot of there's a lot of situations. Well, first, when you raise kids, there are a lot of situations you're going to encounter that you had no training or expectation of. I mean, it's just really, and again, you can kind of take the easy way and just do things that make it easy for you, or you can do what's right, even though it's the hardest thing. One of the examples I like to give to our kids when they were growing up is, like you don't know, everyone says they're a generous person, but you don't know if you're actually a generous person until like, the world is just collapsing and everybody is just barely surviving,
Yeah.
and you share your bread with, your neighbor. Like that tells you you're a generous person when you have plenty to eat and you give your neighbor a piece of bread, that doesn't mean you're generous.
Right.
And so doing what you think is right, even when it's the hardest thing in the world to do, I think is what I have always tried to do, and that's, I think, is the core basis of my character.
So, Jim, if anyone wants to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing, anything about your world, where can they go?
I would say the easiest is LinkedIn. My name is, I think I'm only the only Jim Verquist in on the planet, probably.
Yeah.
It's a very, uh, so if they look me up by name, they'll find me on LinkedIn very easily. You'll probably put my website, Engine2 Innovation, in the show notes. Engine2.us is the website. And so I'm easy to find.
Absolutely. We found each other. I'm glad we did, Jim. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you, Joe.
Best of luck with everything.